Now here is an interesting graphic, and interestingly, this is a weather map. I'm going to talk about the weather, but the Bible has something to say about weather and climate change and what's going to happen on the earth in the last days. What does it have to say about that? Well, I'm looking at Luke 21, and we're going to read. Let me just go to. I'm going to go to the King James version, and it's verse 25 specifically that it's referencing, and I'm going to read it here. Go down to verse 25, and what is verse 25 talking about? It's talking about the return of the Son of Man. And so stand by here. It says, "And there shall be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity." Now, if you look at this, the article here is titled "Buckle Up and Hunker Down, Coast to Coast Storm to Bring Weather Misery for 200 Million People." It says a powerful storm that began its journey Sunday in California will roar across the country over the next 2 to 3 days, spreading heavy snow, torrential rain, crippling ice to more than 200 million Americans and Canadians as well. That's about 60% of the American population. Parts of 39 of the 48 contiguous United States will be touched by the massive storm, including every state east of the Mississippi River, says AccuWeather meteorologist. And so you can look at that. This is one of the graphics from this article. I'll link it. But again, back to Luke 21. The Bible does speak of weather events happening in the last days, and I don't believe in climate change proper, the current definition of it, man-made, etc. I believe in end time, God-made weather, if you will, and the earth groaning, just like God said would happen in the last days. So what does this say? It says, "And upon the earth," this is from Luke 21:25, "upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity." The nations don't know what's going on. It sounds like that seems to be the case with their so-called climate change theory. They don't know what's going on, and they think they need to fix something. And yes, they do need to fix something, but it's more about the sin in their hearts than what they need to fix. They need to get back to God. Verse 25 says, "The sea and the waves roaring." It goes on, verse 26, "men's hearts failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming upon the earth." Could it speak? Could one example be this winter storm, which is going to cause havoc to 200 million people in North America, in the U.S.? "The powers of heaven shall be shaken." And then, so what happens prior to the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory? Well, prior to that, sounds like climate change. It says, "With upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear of things coming upon the earth." It says, "And then, after those things, after these things all occur, after these things come to pass, then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with great power and glory. And when these things begin to come to pass, look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draws nigh." When you see these cataclysmic events happening, these apparently apocalyptic events that they say is coming, when these massive storms come, they should remind you that the Bible speaks of the sea and the waves roaring and world-changing weather events occurring in the last days as the build-up, as part of the birth pains, as part of the entrance, as part of the build-up to the return of the Lord. And I think this is what we see with this example. And this is kind of one way you can relate the weather, big weather events, to end-time Bible prophecy. When you see these big events occurring, not just localized here and there, but big weather events that affect millions of people, they line up and seem to be the definition of events described in the Bible. Now, these aren't the big events. They're going to get a lot worse than this as we go forward, as we get closer to the return of the Lord. But we expect a build-up, just like birth pains. They start off small, and you don't really think that they're birth pains. And they get larger and larger, and they increase in frequency and intensity until the Lord returns. And so this is one of those things that you look at, and you may not completely understand right now that these are birth pains, but as they get bigger and stronger and more frequent, we will understand and we will realize quickly that in fact these are birth pains, and I believe we are in the birth pains. I believe that they started. They're low frequency right now, and they're relatively low intensity, but they will be increasing. And I think time is short. I think we have less than 10 years now before the return of the Lord. I could give you a more specific number there, but I won't in this video, and I have in past videos. But I think the time is short based on what I understand, what I see coming. The shelf life of prophecies and the organization of countries and nations in this world, the rise of nation against nation, and the leadership, the technology in the world for the mark of the beast system, etc. You go on, and headlines these days point to the return of the Lord. So I think you can look at Luke 21 and go read it for yourselves. You can look at that and say, maybe this is one of the events that is causing the fulfillment, that is fulfilling the prophecy spoken of in Luke 21, speaking of men's hearts failing them for fear of the things coming upon them. And this is just a small event. It's going to get much worse than this. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll leave it there. We'll see you guys in the next video.